The fight to stay in the top flight is intensifying. Who will fall into the dreaded relegation playoff spot? Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday the 9th of April. It may be Masters Thursday at Augusta, but who can ace their way to Scottish Premiership survival?
That's it. Don't see Aberdeen coming back from this. 2-0. St Mirren.
Killie, St Mirren, Dundee and Aberdeen are all stuck in a rut. Will this weekend offer any clarity as to who is going to stay up?
We let fans down today, we let ourselves down today because we've been good up until this point. Super support came here, I think we filled the allocation and they came with optimism of how we've been playing. We just need to get back at it. At Rugby Park we've been strong and we'll look to try and be that again next week.
And what difference can the fans make at either end of the table? Can they be the so-called 12th man and will their side to success?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, alongside me to chat all of that this morning, Herald football writer Stephen McGowan. Morning, Stephen. Right, assuming Livy are finishing in that bottom spot for the sake of argument, who's finishing 11th?
Probably still going Kilmarnock, but I have to say Aberdeen are giving them quite a challenge in the current evidence. So, yeah, 60-40 Kilmarnock for me.
Okay. And also joining us this morning, Rory Loy, former Scottish Premiership striker. Morning, Rory. Same question to you. Who do you think is going to be fighting that relegation playoff spot?
Morning, Charlotte. I think the post-split fixtures have been pretty kind to Aberdeen. I think that might help them. I don't know what is the answer. I think Kilmarnock's... I'm going to say, still going to plump with Aberdeen, 11th.
Okay, nice one. Well, I know it gets to this point and you're like, they're all playing each other, so it just becomes so hard to even contemplate. But you mentioned, Rory, about Aberdeen's post-split fixtures being quite favourable. 3 home games, I think. Home to Killie, then away to Livy, then at home to Dundee United and St Mirren before finishing up away to Dundee. I mean, that it might be favourable, but they've not really done very well this season when they've maybe had favourable games.
No, you're right. And I mean, I'm saying they're favourable as if to say like it's complete pot luck and they've come out of the draw with 3 home ties and all the rest of it. But ultimately, they were due 3 home games, so it's not as if Aberdeen went into a lucky dip and just so happened to have 3 home games, and one of them is against Kilmarnock and one of them's against St Mirren. But I think those 2 games being at home are massive for them. You're right, they've struggled regardless of where they were playing and who they've been playing recently. They really have been poor, and it's left a lot of doubt over whether they're going to be able to avoid that 11th spot. But look, moving forward from here, I think Stephen Robinson's just got to get, I think most teams will be looking at 1, maybe 2 wins between and avoiding defeat and a few others just to stay safe. But I think it goes all the way up to Dundee. I really do. I think there's a number of clubs involved in that scrap.
We talk a lot, and we've talked a lot on this podcast about character. For example, Stephen Robinson's St Mirren side, how much character they used to show. Stephen, do you think Aberdeen have that character necessary to fight their way out of trouble? And if not yet, do you think that'll come?
I don't think there's any evidence that they do at the moment. I mean, they've won, and this is a really sobering figure, they've won 8 out of 32 league games this season. 8 out of 32. They've drawn 6, they've lost 18. I think some of the performances in that time have been alarming. Probably the worst one, to be fair, wasn't a league game. It was a Scottish Cup defeat to Dunfermline at East End Park, where I remember Andrew Considine was on TV after that game and he was talking about a lack of fight. That's an Aberdeen diehard saying that, bemoaning that. And I think you're right that Stephen Robinson's teams were always noted for having that quality, but these are not Stephen Robinson players, really. And it's difficult to see how he can take his preferences for shape and for character and inject them into this team in a very short space of time. So, in answer to your question, do they have the fight and the character they need? I think the jury is really out in that.
And the interesting thing is, for Aberdeen, I mean, they spent so much money on players. They brought in these players who, for all intents and purposes, were very high quality. I mean, I think people were hailing Jensen as the signing of the summer when he came in. And I wonder, Rory, how important character becomes then, because if you've got quality players who aren't showing that fight and that desire to win games, the quality kind of goes out the window at that point.
It does. I do think, though, it goes beyond the players at Aberdeen at this moment in time. Now, the players have got to take more responsibility. They've got far more quality than they're showing. They have not performed. They have not shown any degree of mental strength, any degree of bravery. You know, I'm not giving the players a pass here at all. I don't think the board have helped in terms of, you know, it didn't work out with Jimmy Thielen, of course, and he leaves his post. Jimmy Thielen, split opinion. It was probably naturally time for him to move on. He won the Scottish Cup. He had a great start in his first year, and then things just kind of tailed away. So he leaves, and they tried to just coast their way to the end of the season with Peter Leaven in charge. I felt for Peter Leaven ever so slightly, actually, because I think that he was put in a difficult position. But they just tried to coast their way to the season, and they sank like a stone. And they appointed Peter Leaven with the idea that between his appointment and the end of the season, and they would just stay safe in the league and everything would be fine, they would go and they would, Lutz Van den Steel would look for this, you know, game-changing manager that would come in and change the course of Aberdeen's fortunes, and he would come in at the end of the season. And their hand was forced because, for me, they took their eye off the ball and thought they could just coast. And you can't do that in this league, especially with how competitive it is this year. That leads to, in my opinion, what was an unplanned panic appointment. And I'm not saying that Stephen Robinson in himself wasn't a candidate for the job, but the timing of it, they were not planning on appointing a manager at that moment in time. Stephen Robinson's then coming in at the helm with, as Stephen says, players that maybe don't fit the way he wants to play at this moment in time. If he was the man for the job and he gets appointed early summer, then he's got an opportunity to go and sign players. It then puts him in the back foot. He's reacted in a way that he feels that calling out the players is going to help, and it's just been, I'm not sure that's going to help, and it's just been a disaster for Aberdeen this season from moment one, from the decision making all the way down to the players' performances on the pitch.
Yeah, it's not looking great, is it? And as you say, Rory, Stephen Robinson was there all along. You know, for them to take that long and then go with somebody who was kind of there from the outset, as you say, it does scream panic appointment. So they've still got a few games left, but as you say, it's kind of hard to see where.
I think what happens there, Charlotte, is that there's too much concern given for what supporters think at times. I mean, I know supporters are paying their money, they're entitled to have some kind of say, but I think there was the decision not to go with Stephen Robinson right at the outset, I think was partly down to the fact that they knew there would be a negative reaction. They wanted to give Lutz Van den Steel his head, and they wanted him to try and bring in an overseas candidate. They spoke to Horneland, they spoke to Schwartz, and you know, it was maybe too many cooks at the top of the club and too much broth, and I think a bit more decisiveness right at the beginning. You know, as Rory says, it did look as if Stephen Robinson was a bit of a panic decision because they were running out of options and running out of time. And it's something I think they probably need to review at the highest level of the club.
Well, what about Stephen Robinson's former club, St Mirren, then, Rory? Because they are away to Celtic before the split. Then they've got Celtic in the Cup semi-final. This could be a real chance for them to really boost their confidence going into the massive split run that they've got.
Yeah, I mean, Craig McLeish has obviously come in. He's won 2 out of 3. I mean, that day the game at home to Rangers were the better side and deserved to win by probably 1 goal, but the conditions were awful, really, really bad. He then had a couple of weeks on the training ground during the international break, and he did say that would make a world of difference to the message he wanted to deliver to the players and the performance on the pitch, and he was right. To win away at Falkirk was a massive, massive result. And then the Aberdeen game was pretty run-of-the-mill, comfortable, and they played well in that one as well. So, yeah, probably not the ideal fixture for them on Saturday. I'll be there covering the game for Sports Sound, so I'm looking forward to that one. But it'll be interesting to see if, the tweaks that he's made in the team, he's got players playing in slightly different positions. He has got the team playing slightly differently to Stephen Robinson. How that works at Celtic Park, I'm not quite sure. Not many teams will go and pass the ball around at Celtic Park. However, if there is an opportunity to do that, then this season probably is the one, because some teams have managed to do that. I still don't think St Mirren are out of the mire. I know they've had 2 good results recently, but playing Celtic back-to-back, and then they've got that run of bottom 5 post-split fixtures, I think they're just as much a contender for 11th spot as Kilmarnock and Aberdeen. I know I went with Aberdeen. To be honest, Charlotte, that was just guesswork. I could not call who's going to finish 11th. I just think Kilmarnock at home have got something about them. And if they can nick a point or 2 away from home, then they might be okay. So, tough couple of games for St Mirren. The cup one's big as well, obviously. But I don't know if I'm convinced that they won't finish 11th just yet. That's how tight it is.
What about Kelly then? Because, as you say, Rory, they've got something about them at home. It seems to have been an upturn in performances with maybe not getting the results they would have always wanted. But they've got 3 away games in the split. I mean, how big of an impact do you think that's going to have for them?
Well, I think if they can get 6 points in their home games, that'll go a long, long way to seeing them stay up. Now, I've covered 2 Kilmarnock games recently, and they've both been away. One was at Falkirk, where they lost a goal after about 40 seconds, and one was at Hibs at the weekend, where they lost a goal after 13 seconds. And I mean, they were poor at Falkirk. Neil McCann admitted that. At Hibs, I heard Neil McCann saying that they had the better of the game from 2-0 onwards, but they lacked a bit of threat. And I thought whilst Hibs went really off the boil in the second half, they were really poor in the second half. Actually, Hibs deserved to win the game. 3-0 probably flattered them slightly. But Kilmarnock's away form will be a concern. But again, Kilmarnock are due 3 away fixtures, so they'll need to just face those head on. If they could take care of their home fixtures and get 6 points out of that, that might be enough.
Well, they host Dundee this weekend. Dundee are another interesting one, Stephen, because again, a team who have kind of been having a little bit of an upturn recently, but again, like the teams around them, not quite out of it yet. How do you see Dundee coping with their post-split fixtures?
Yeah, it's interesting that we haven't really spoken about Dundee as contenders for that position. I mean, they are 5 points ahead of Kilmarnock. You would think that probably is a margin that they should see them okay, but you wouldn't be taking anything for granted. I mean, you look at them; they're going to Kilmarnock, where as Rory alludes to, Kilmarnock are strong. So they would hope that St Mirren obviously will go down at Celtic Park and so on. I think Dundee will have enough. I actually thought they were unfortunate not to take a point against Celtic last weekend. I thought they did well, although unfortunate to lose it in the end. I think Stephen Paisley's done a really good job, considering the sheer negativity that met him when he came in. I mean, I think inside a month of joining the club, there were fan groups uniting to demand his removal, along with the managing director and so on, and the technical director. So I think against that white noise and that backdrop of negativity, he's managed to really steady things and quieten it all down. And I think there should be some appreciation of that, but that will only be the case if he keeps them up, and there's still work to be done yet in that front.
Right, well, Rory, here's a question for you. What does it actually take to keep a team up to keep a team from getting relegated?
Oh, well, I mean, my experience of that is I had a bit of a battle with it in League One down in England, but the biggest one I had was when I joined St Mirren under Jack Ross in the January. I think they were bottom of the Championship by a country mile, and he totally overhauled the squad. I think, as much as it's cliched, the team that's most together, in terms of the manager being able to instill strong mentality as well, in those moments where you are 1-0 up with 5-10 minutes to play, are you able to get over the line? And it's not dissimilar to trying to win the league as well. And I know that in the games that we had when I was down there, and we had to win pretty much every single game in the last, I don't know how many, and we needed to draw at Easter Road on the last day. And that momentum and that winning mentality kind of just carried forward from a good few wins. But I would say mental strength, being able to deal with the pressure in those moments where you're winning the game or you're drawing the game. Can you nick that goal? Can you just nick that win when it's tight, when it's in the balance? Do you believe you're going to go in and you're going to be the team that wins it? Because I've been there at one each in games with 10 minutes to go, and I've been in sides where you just know you're going to nick the winner, or you've got that inner belief that you're going to score the goal, or that your team's going to score the goal. And I've been in sides as well where it's one each, and you've just got that feeling in the pit of your stomach. It's coming. We're going to concede a goal here. You could just feel it. And that comes down to mentality, and that's instilled by the manager, by the group of players, by the leaders in the dressing room. So I think the ones that can stand up and really lead the team and keep their head in those moments of pressure. But it is really difficult to call which team that'll be at this moment in time. Craig McLeish is a young manager. Has he got the experience to do it? Neil McCann's an experienced manager. And then you've got Stephen Robinson at Aberdeen, who's been there and done it all before. So it's difficult to predict who's going to win. But I would say strength of character and mental strength is probably the biggest thing that will see the teams that finish above 11th over the line.
It's interesting as well, Rory, isn't it? Because whoever finishes 11th will do so in a bit of a low, and they'll come up against a team for the Championship that's been winning games. It could be Partick Thistle, maybe Dunfermline, the way things are looking at the moment, or Arbroath have something to say about that. So, you've got one team who've been in a good run, who've kind of made their case at the end of the season against a team which will be really down, albeit that there are glitches in the playoff system as well. So, yeah, it really is a mentality thing, you would have thought.
I know, and anyone who says, Stephen, that whoever finishes 11th will be too strong, if it is the likes of Dunfermline, you just need to look at the games against Hibs and Aberdeen this year to show that that will not be easy.
I do wonder, I'll come to you, Stephen, if you are Dunfermline or Thistle or the Championship club that ends up in that playoff spot against the 11th spot Premiership team, who are you wanting to face?
That's a good question. I don't think you would be necessarily wanting to go to Rugby Park, because, I think sometimes these artificial pitches do give teams a competitive advantage at home against teams that play in grass and so on, who are not so accustomed to playing on them. Current evidence, put it this way, if you're Dunfermline, you'd be quite happy to play Aberdeen again, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And you'd be delighted to play Aberdeen again. So, on current evidence, the team who are sinking like a stone in Aberdeen. I think that would probably be an option that all of the teams going for promotion from the Championship would fancy at the minute.
Well, in terms of home conditions, if Arbroath make it to the
there's a point, yeah.
If they make it to the playoff final, I think they'll see Kilmarnock's pitch and raise them a windy, gusty, rainy, windswept venue.
Good point. I've had great levellers in both of those games, isn't there? Yeah. As the ball blows over the stand and it ends up in Holland.
I've played there in pre-season, and when the sun's beating down and it's still windy and you're getting splashed by bits of the sea, and it's fun and games up there.
I do wonder, Rory, who you think. I mean, are you the same as Stephen? Do you think, on current evidence, Aberdeen look like the most appealing tie for the Championship team coming up?
I think the problem they've got is, I mean, when these playoffs started, I was involved with Falkirk in the first ever playoff. Hibs, Hamilton beat Hibs in the final, but I mean, our fixtures were very close together, a lot more close together than they are these days in terms of the turnaround. We'd played Queen of the South. We had lost 3-1 down there on the Tuesday night. We played on the Saturday and beat them after extra time. We then played Hamilton on the Tuesday and drew 1 each, and then played them on the Saturday and drew 1. We lost 1-0. They went on to play Hibs. So we had so much to contend with before we could even think about playing Hibs. Hamilton were the same. Now, if Partick Thistle finish second, genuinely, it's no concern to them who they play in the final, because if they don't win the semi-final, they're not getting through to the final. So I know it's a boring answer and it's a very managerial player answer, but if Partick Thistle, let's take Partick Thistle for example, if Arbroath and Dunfermline play each other in the semi-final, the quarterfinals effectively of the playoffs, third versus fourth, what's the point in Mark Wilson going and watching Aberdeen, St Mirren and Kilmarnock and Dundee? It's just, he's better doing his stuff if they get through and after it, because but to answer your question, who's the more favourable? I think if Aberdeen do finish 11th, their run of form and the concern among the players and the staff at that club will lead to such a vulnerability if they do end up 11th, that I do think that would be a tie that could be overcome from the Championship club. I really do.
It's almost like tempting fate, isn't it, if you start looking at who you could be playing in the playoff final before you even got there. Right, well, finally, there have been some grumbles since the announcement of the post-split fixtures about fans and ticket allocations. Rory, from a player perspective, does the number of fans in the ground make a significant difference as a player?
It's difficult to say because statistics will tell you that playing at home, regardless of the team, I don't think any manager in history's got a better away record than a home record over the course of their career. I could be wrong with that, but I would highly doubt it. Whether that's the comfort of playing at home, whether that's used to being there, or is that down to having fans, I'm not quite sure. My experience of it is that I've been at teams that people struggle to deal with the fan pressure at home and feel more comfortable playing away and vice versa. But I do think that in scenarios where there's so much on the line, fans do get behind the team. So yes, I would say yes to that question. I do think having more of your fans in the stadium gives you a lift and gives you a boost whether you're playing for a title, whether you're playing for Europe, whether you're playing for to stay in the league. But I know there's some anomalies here and there, but generally speaking, across the board, the teams that are due to play their 3 home games have got their 3 home games. There's this cry of unfairness almost. Well, it's not unfair, Celtic, for example, are due 3 home fixtures. Naturally, they're going to play their last game away from home. At home, because that's and there's so many things to consider when picking those fixtures that the team that's due to play 3 home games gets the 3 home games. I don't really see what the big outrage is. I know it's not ideal, and I know it doesn't fall in line with what's happened historically, but sometimes you can't avoid that with the amount of things you've got to factor in. But yeah, fans will play a part, that's for sure.
There was always going to be this scenario if we got into a free team into the season, there would be a toxicity around it. And people will cry foul and people will cry conspiracy. People who are old enough, if not necessarily bright enough to know better, will cry foul because that's the country we live in. We are a small country and we're quite often small-minded as well when it comes to these things.
You got to get the excuses in early, just in case. if you're one of the top 3 teams, you've got to say, well, this is unfair. This is why we won't.
To be fair, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think the actual clubs themselves are kicking up much fuss. I mean, Derek McInnes, I thought, was pretty measured on it yesterday. You know, I know Hearts fans are annoyed about, you know, going to Celtic Park on the final day and, of course, the allocation. But, I mean, I don't know if you're going to come on to allocations, but, I mean, when it comes to allocations, the clubs have made rods for their own back with this stuff because, you know, since certainly 2022-23, a lot of clubs have been cutting the allocations of Celtic and Rangers and other clubs in order to facilitate more of their own teams, so their own fans. So it can't be a great surprise when that comes back and bites them in the backside, to be honest, in a situation like this.
I think as well, see if you look at the Hearts fixtures, I mean, the post-split fixtures of, you know, the announcement and all that, it just eats into the excitement of everything that we've had this season. But I think if you're top of the league by a point, I mean, they've got Rangers at home and post-split. Their toughest game is Celtic away. Would you not want that last, Stephen? Would you not want the opportunity to have it sewn up by going there? And then you've got the other option of, you know, if you do manage to get yourself in a position where you're battling it out with Rangers, for example, and let's say Celtic are out of it by that point. I mean...
Yeah, Celtic Park is maybe the place you want to be, isn't it? If it's between Hearts and Rangers.
What on earth are you suggesting?
I'm just saying that there's a number of scenarios which lead to it maybe not being the worst thing in the world. However, you know, I do think Celtic will be in it. I really do think Celtic will be in it by the last game of the season. I think Celtic will be in it. I think Hearts will be in it. I think Rangers will be in it. I don't think there'll be anyone who'll fall away dramatically. So it makes for quite the end of the season.
And Stephen, Green Brigade officially back in for these games as well. That surely will give not only the players a big boost knowing that there's actually going to be noise at Parkhead, but also I suppose the other supporters in the stadium as well.
It's an attempt to unity. Whether it'll work or not, it remains to be seen. Obviously, that depends on results. I mean, the Green Brigade are coming back and been told to behave this time, but they're still demanding an apology from the Celtic board. So I think it will be. It will take more than a simple return of 250 fans or whatever it is to bring unity back to Celtic. I think it will take a run to the end of the season, which so far has been beyond them in terms of results and in terms of performances. But, you know, they've given themselves a chance. I agree with Rory. I think the fact they've got 4 home games gives them a real chance of being right in there at the finish, at the death.
Right, well, who do you think, Rory, whose fans do you think will be best for their club in the relegation fight and in the title race? So who in the top half, whose fans will be best for trying to get their club over the line, and who in the bottom half's fans will be best for trying to get them over the line?
I think in the top half, I think Rangers and Celtic fans have, you know, Celtic fans more so have been there before and done it. The players are used to the atmosphere, they're used to the intensity of the crowd in these run-ins. I think it'll be something the Hearts players have never experienced before, and I think the fans will get right behind them. I don't think it's a case of being better necessarily. I just think it's a case of it being a new world, and that excitement and that passion and that real importance of the run-in will mean that the Hearts fans can really get behind their team, and I think that they could make the biggest difference to the team's performance on the pitch. So I'll say Hearts for the top 6, and for the bottom 6, I think Aberdeen's fans, the way they're feeling at the moment, could potentially work against them if things don't go so well. So I'll say St Mirren are in a good, rich vein of form at the moment. I think that they'll bring a lot of fans to Hampden, and I think that will show their support to the team. I think they'll bring a lot of fans to Hampden. So we'll say St Mirren for the bottom half. Stephen, what do you think?
It can work both ways, can't it? I mean, it was interesting watching Hearts at Livingston last weekend, and when they fought back to 2-1 up, and the fans are absolutely bouncing around 3 sides of the stadium. And then Livingston equalised, and it all goes very quiet, it all goes very tense, because that's the nature of the beast in these situations. I mean, tension will course through every one of these grounds for the 3 teams who are competing for the title. and it might be as much of a drain as it is a positive factor when they're winning. So it's which team copes best with the kind of the ebbs and flows of their own supporters. I think Celtic having 4 home games, the Green Brigade back, that will certainly help them. I think that will be a big factor for them if they can keep their noses in front and get early goals, which is always a question. And yeah, I agree with Rory. I think St Mirren, I think in the bottom half will benefit most from their own backing.
Well, that is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Stephen and Rory, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.